When I was in college, I met a girl named Anna, and at the time, I truly believed I had found someone stable. Not perfect, not idealized, but real. We met during my second year, when life was a mix of lectures, deadlines, part-time work, and constant anxiety about the future. I wasn't looking for anything serious back then, but sometimes things happen quietly, without any dramatic beginning. We started talking after class one afternoon, just small talk at first, then coffee, then studying together. Slowly, naturally, she became part of my routine. I noticed early on that she was different from many girls around us, more reserved, more thoughtful. She listened more than she spoke, and when she spoke, it was usually honest. Our relationship developed steadily. We argued sometimes, like any couple does, about time, about priorities, about misunderstandings that come from stress and youth. But those arguments never felt dangerous. They were small, manageable, forgettable. We always talked things through. I trusted her, and I felt trusted in return. I knew her background wasn't easy. Her father had struggled with alcohol for most of her life. He wasn't violent, but he was unreliable, emotionally absent, and often disappeared for long periods. Her mother was barely present at all. Instead, her grandparents became her real family. They raised her, supported her, guided her, and believed in her when her own parents didn't. They were also the ones paying for her college tuition. Anna rarely talked about her family, but when she did, I could hear the weight in her voice. Shame, pressure, responsibility. She felt like she had to succeed not just for herself, but for them. I respected that. I never saw her family situation as a red flag. If anything, I saw it as proof of her resilience. After about a year together, we decided to move in. It wasn't impulsive. Rent was expensive, commuting was exhausting, and we were already spending most nights together. It felt practical and emotional at the same time, like a step forward. The first months of living together were calm. We created routines without even realizing it. Grocery shopping on Sundays, quiet evenings when we studied in the same room, late dinners after work. Small domestic moments that make a place feel like home. I worked while studying, and my parents helped me financially when they could. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't struggling either. Money wasn't something I worried about daily. That's why the first time I noticed cash missing, I didn't panic. I assumed I miscounted. $100 gone could easily be a mistake. Maybe I spent it and forgot. Maybe I moved it somewhere else. I didn't want to overthink it. But then it happened again. Another $50 disappeared. Then another 100 a few days later. I checked my wallet. I checked my desk drawer. I checked my bank withdrawals. Everything added up except the cash. At that point, the feeling changed. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was discomfort. A quiet pressure in my chest that didn't go away. I didn't accuse Anna. I didn't even ask her. I was afraid of sounding paranoid, afraid of damaging trust over something I couldn't prove. Instead, I started paying attention. I noticed how tense she became whenever money came up casually, how quickly she changed the subject, how often she checked her phone late at night. None of it was obvious enough to point a finger, but together it formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I told myself that relationships are built on trust, but trust becomes fragile when silence replaces clarity. I didn't want a confrontation fueled by doubt. I wanted certainty. And that desire, more than suspicion, more than jealousy, pushed me toward a decision I knew was wrong the moment I made it. Instead of asking questions, I chose to observe. Instead of communicating, I chose to watch. At the time, I justified it as protection of myself, of our relationship, of the truth. But looking back now, I understand that this was the moment where everything quietly crossed a line. Because once you start looking for answers in secret, you're already preparing yourself for something you may not want to find. And I was about to find it. After the money disappeared for the third time, I stopped pretending it was a coincidence. I didn't want to believe anything bad about Anna, but ignoring the problem wasn't making it go away. It was doing the opposite. It was eating at me quietly, constantly, every time I opened my wallet or checked my desk drawer. I remember lying in bed one night, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing next to me. She was sleeping peacefully, and I felt like the worst person alive for even questioning her. At the same time, I felt stupid for not questioning anything at all. That inner conflict between trust and self-respect was exhausting. I told myself I needed clarity, not accusations. Facts, not emotions. That's how I justified what I did next. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the table. I wasn't snooping through her messages. I didn't open anything personal. I just did one thing I still feel conflicted about to this day. I installed a location tracking app that synced to my phone. I knew it crossed a boundary. I knew it wasn't healthy. But I also knew I wasn't ready for a confrontation without answers. The first couple of days showed nothing unusual. She went to college. She came home. She met friends. She went grocery shopping. Everything looked exactly how it should. For a brief moment, I almost felt relieved, like maybe I was overthinking things. But the money didn't stop disappearing. Smaller amounts now. 20 here. 40 there. Enough to stay under the radar, but enough to hurt. That's when my relief turned into dread. Whatever was happening wasn't random. By the end of the week, Anna told me she was going out for the evening. "I'm meeting some friends," she said casually while putting on her jacket. "Just a small get-together." I nodded. "Have fun." I waited a few minutes after she left, then opened the app. The location didn't match her story. She wasn't anywhere near her friend's place. She wasn't in a cafe. She wasn't at a bar. The address on my screen was unfamiliar, sitting on the edge of town. At first, I thought the app was wrong. I refreshed it, then refreshed again. Same location. I opened the map and zoomed in. That's when I saw it. A small gambling hall. Slot machines. Bright lights. Open late. My chest tightened instantly. I stared at my phone for a long time, hoping I was misunderstanding something, hoping there was a reasonable explanation. But deep down, I already knew there wasn't. The feeling was heavy, cold, and unmistakable. She wasn't just hiding where she was going. She was hiding why. That night, I barely slept. Every scenario ran through my head. How long had this been going on? How much money was gone? Why didn't she tell me? Was this a one-time thing, or something much worse? When she came home later, I pretended to be asleep. I listened as she moved quietly, trying not to wake me. I could hear the guilt in her movements. Slow, careful, almost rehearsed. The next morning, I looked at her differently. Not with anger, not with disgust, but with concern mixed with fear. She looked tired, drained, like someone carrying a secret that was getting heavier by the day. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed time to think. I needed to decide whether I wanted to attack the problem or help the person. Over the next few days, I checked the app again. Twice more, she went to the same place. Always with an excuse. Always casual. Always confident I wouldn't question it. That was when it hit me hardest. This wasn't just bad judgment. This was a pattern. And patterns don't disappear on their own. I realized then that this wasn't about money anymore. The missing cash was just a symptom. Whatever she was dealing with ran deeper than that. Deeper than lies. Deeper than excuses. I was angry, yes. But more than that, I was scared. Scared that I didn't really know the person I lived with. Scared that confronting her would either break us or expose something she wasn't ready to face. Still, I knew one thing for sure. Doing nothing was no longer an option. And sooner or later, we were going to have a conversation that would change everything. I waited 2 more days before saying anything. Not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I wanted to approach the conversation the right way. I knew that if I came at her with accusations, anger, or evidence, she would shut down immediately. Whatever was happening, it wasn't something she was proud of. That much was obvious. On the 3rd evening, I asked her if we could talk. Nothing dramatic. No raised voice. No tension in my tone. She sat across from me at the small kitchen table, holding a mug with both hands like it was something solid she could anchor herself to. I remember thinking how tired she looked, not physically exhausted, emotionally drained, like someone who hadn't relaxed in a long time. "I've noticed money has been going missing," I said quietly, "and I'm not here to attack you. I just want to understand what's going on." She froze. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She didn't deny it either. Her eyes dropped to the table, and her shoulders tensed in a way that told me everything I needed to know. Silence can be louder than any confession. "I didn't mean to," she finally said. I was going to put it back. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. I took a breath. "Anna, where has the money been going?" She shook her head slowly, like she was trying to physically push the words away. Then her face crumpled, and the composure she always tried to maintain disappeared completely. "I didn't want you to know," she said. "I didn't want anyone to know." She started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears she wiped away quickly, embarrassed that she couldn't stop them. I stayed silent. I didn't interrupt her. I let the space exist, because sometimes people need silence more than questions. After a long pause, she spoke again. "I've been gambling," she said. "Slot machines. For a while now." I nodded slowly. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it out loud still made my chest feel heavy. "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. "Longer than I want to admit." She told me how it started, just once, out of curiosity. A friend had gone, she tagged along, put in a small amount, won a little. That win stuck in her head, the feeling, the escape, the moment where nothing else mattered. Over time, it became a habit, then a secret, then a problem. "I kept telling myself I could stop whenever I wanted," she said, "and sometimes I did stop, for weeks. But then something would happen. Stress, an argument, memories about my dad, and I'd go back. That's when everything clicked. Her father. Alcohol. Addiction. Different substance. Same pattern. She told me she was terrified of becoming like him. Terrified that, if anyone found out, they'd look at her the same way people looked at him, with disappointment, judgment, and distance. So she hid it. From her grandparents, from friends, from me. "I didn't steal because I wanted to," she said quietly. "I stole because I panicked." I didn't excuse what she did, but I finally understood it. I told her the truth, calmly, honestly. "I found out because I tracked your location," I said. "I'm not proud of it. I crossed a line. But I didn't know how else to get answers." She looked up at me then, not angry, not shocked, just tired. "I figured," she said softly. "Part of me hoped you'd notice. Part of me was terrified you would." We talked for hours that night, about addiction, about shame, about control, about how easy it is to fall into something that feels like relief when your entire life has been built on surviving instead of living. At some point, she asked me a question I'll never forget. "Do you think I'm broken?" I shook my head immediately. "No," I said. "I think you're hurting, and hurting people don't always know how to ask for help." But I also made one thing clear. This can't continue, not in secret, Not alone. She nodded. I know. Together, we talked through the options. Ignoring it wasn't one. Pretending love alone could fix it wasn't either. In the end, we agreed on the only thing that actually made sense. She needed professional help. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. That night didn't magically fix everything, but it changed something fundamental between us. The lies were out. The fear was spoken. And for the first time in a long while, the problem had a name. And once something has a name, it can finally be faced. The days after our conversation felt strangely quiet. Not awkward, just heavy. Like the apartment was holding on to everything we had finally said out loud. Anna didn't go anywhere alone for a while, not because I demanded it, but because she didn't trust herself yet. And I respected that honesty more than any promise. We didn't pretend everything was suddenly okay. We didn't sweep the problem under the rug. Instead, we treated it like what it was, something serious that required real effort. Within a week, she started seeing a specialist. Not just one appointment, not a quick talk meant to ease guilt, but an actual treatment plan. Therapy. Accountability. Structure. The kind of help that doesn't just treat the behavior, but the reason behind it. I watched her change slowly, not in dramatic ways, in small, meaningful ones. She became more open about her emotions. When stress built up, she talked instead of disappearing. When shame crept in, she named it instead of hiding from it. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when she came home exhausted, emotionally drained, frustrated with herself. But she didn't run. That mattered more than anything. We also had to rebuild trust, not just mine in her, but hers in herself. We talked openly about money, about triggers, about what would happen if she felt the urge to gamble again. There were no accusations, just plans. 3 months passed. I won't say it was easy. Recovery rarely is. But it was honest. And honesty has a way of creating strength where fear used to live. Anna stayed committed to her treatment. She didn't miss sessions. She didn't lie. She didn't minimize what had happened. And slowly, I started recognizing the person I fell in love with again. Except now, she was more self-aware, more grounded, more present. One evening, she said something that stayed with me. I used to think asking for help meant I was weak, she said. Now I realize hiding was the weakest thing I could have done. She was right. Looking back, I understand how easy it would have been to miss all of this. The missing money was the loudest symptom, but not the first sign. The first signs were subtle. Tension. Silence. Emotional distance. Little changes that are easy to ignore when you love someone and want to believe everything is fine. That's the dangerous part. The people closest to us often suffer quietly, not because they don't trust us, but because they don't want to be a burden. They're afraid of judgment, afraid of being seen differently, afraid that honesty will cost them love. Sometimes, the problem isn't that we don't care, it's that we don't look closely enough. If there's one lesson this experience taught me, it's this. Pay attention to the small signs. Check in with the people you love, not casually, but genuinely. And don't assume silence means everything is okay. Addiction doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like a smile, a routine, and a secret carried alone. Today, things are good between us, not perfect, but real, stronger than before, built on transparency instead of fear. And while I know recovery is a process, not a finish line, I also know something important. Facing the truth together saved us. And now, I want to ask you something. If someone close to you was struggling, really struggling, would you notice the signs? And more importantly, would they feel safe enough to tell you? If you're enjoying this story, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really helps the channel grow.